So today we start the equilibrium under production or the efficiency condition of production. Okay, and obviously it is quite similar to analysis of consumption. It's similar in terms of the fact that we are dealing with these isocons, and we have drawn a contract curve, and that contract curve goes through the points where these pair of isocons are tangent to each other. So let's say on at P1, P2 and P3, Pareto efficiency is attained. Okay. So in that term, it is, in those terms rather, it is same. So here also we will define contract curve in the parallel way, but there is also slight difference. The difference is important. So the difference between this treatment of efficiency in production and that of that is there in consumption. Okay, the point of difference is quite important, and the important thing is this: in consumption, we had products here, right? So whenever I'm drawing an Edgeworth box like this one, there has to be something which allows us to draw it as a box. Now, what I'm trying to say by this is a box basically defines some limitations, right? So a box basically fixes some area. So behind that, that means we have some restrictive conditions. Now, in terms of in the model of consumption, the role of those restrictions was played by this thing: the total availability of products, which are basically the sum of the endowments, that has to be equal with total demand, right? Or final allocation, let's say. If you want to write in terms of allocation, then here we are talking about final allocation. Now, all that is fine, but here, you see, in production, if we talk about the notations now, so what do we have here? Here you have a slightly different situation. So in terms of notations, and by that also we are talking about construction. Okay, so in terms of construction, here we have inputs giving the limit, right? So what are we looking at here is a model of this structure where an economy has limited supply of inputs. That is, for our convenience, we have taken only two, K and L. Increasing the number of inputs will not really change anything, the final result. Anyway, so what do we have here? Here we have, in terms of limit, the inputs rather than the outputs. And that's quite meaningful because we have this limit on inputs, and our task here is to find the efficient combination of outputs that can be produced using this limited amount of inputs. Okay, so that's why instead of the products, K0 and L0 are here. So what we are trying to do, we are trying to find the combination of X and Y, these are the products, satisfying Pareto optimality. So that's our objective here, okay? So in some sense, that means if we go by the order of activity, what we are trying to say is that there is a limit of input, limit to the resources, And using these resources, an economy is trying to find the efficient amount of production of two goods. And then we are taking those two goods and and constructing a model of two consumers, where the limitation in the consumer's model is given by that production, okay, that x and y is amount that has been produced, and then we are searching for the efficient distribution of that product. So that's how it relates. All right. So that is why, because this is important, because if you go just by memory and try to copy whatever done in consumption, then you will end up doing wrong. So I will say it again, this similarity is limited to this Edgeworth box construction and all these tangential points of isoquants here. Okay, so these are obviously isoquants, and also these kind of arguments that A as a point, this point is not Pareto efficient, but obviously this point is Pareto efficient, and all these ideas that if I denote Lx to be the amount of labor devoted to produce, so this is labor devoted to produce X, then this gap L naught minus Lx is devoted to produce Y. So that interpretation remains same, and that simple interpretation remains true for this kx here also, right? So k naught minus kx will be devoted to y. So that is same. But the point of difference is that here we have inputs at the limits that fixes the size of the Edgeworth box. All right. And we are searching the amount of production which is Pareto efficient. Here also all these possibilities remains the same, that you can produce entirely entirely x at this point. You can produce entirely x, okay, and not at all y. All right, and that's Pareto efficient and all. So all these arguments remain same, and so to that extent we are not really interested in those things, but we are interested in something else here. Okay, first of all is this shape of this contract curve. So here the contract curve, if I talk about this L axis, okay, the horizontal axis, then with respect to this horizontal axis, we have a concave contract curve here, right? And yes, we can have convex contract curve, but those two will have quite different meaning. Now, when I started all this construction or notations of general equilibrium, all right, I've said that I'm assuming two farms. Right? I've said that I'm assuming two farms, and I named them as F and G. And see here, for simplicity, you may think that I have not written F or G anywhere. Now that's not true. In this diagram, what we are trying to do is, we are trying to find the efficient amount of X and Y that can be produced using our limited resources for the economy. All right. So that's the first thing that you must understand. All right. So this is again one point of difference. So earlier we had two consumers, and the distributive question rather was this: which consumer will get how much, right? Now here I have said that in the initial points of initial classes of talking about this, I've said about two farms F and G, but here there is nothing of that sort. Why not? Because first of all, because here we are interested not in which farm is going to produce what amount. Okay, the answer to that question of how much will F produce and how much will G produce, that question is not getting answered here. So that is the first point of clarity. Here what we are getting is this: how much efficient, that's important, X and Y will be produced in the economy. So that's what we are interested in here. Okay, so that is our question here. The reason I'm saying this is that when you will be solving a problem of GE involving consumption and production, you may not come up with two farms. You may come up with one single farm, and that does not create any problem. All right. Then we will say, okay, the economy's production is represented by one single farm. And alternatively, here also we can say that this diagram is drawn for a single farm. But the better terminology, I must say, will be the economy. So now, let's just say that our efficient point here is this P2. Okay, let's say this is our efficient point. So from P2 we have this let's say Lx bar, and here we have this so that's a bit close. So here we have this Kx bar. So this is our amount of K which will be devoted to X, and this is our amount of L which will be devoted to X. Okay, and this isoquant, like any isoquant, it signifies let's say this isoquant is for X, right? So what is the isoquant which is convex to OX represents? That is our isoquant X2. X2 represents the combination of K and L, the different combinations of K and L which can be produced, which can produce the different combination of K and L which can produce to for simplicity we'll just say X2 amount of X. Okay, so that's our this isoquant here, that's what it signifies. Similarly, since it's a tangential point, so we have a point from the isoquant Y2 also here, okay, Y2 here, which is convex to OY, and that signifies that if I devote this amount to the production of Y, then the resultant amount will be Y2, right? That's what isoquant says. Right? Now, so what do we get here? We are getting that X2 and Y2, that which is representing this isoquant. These are the amounts of two goods which are being produced in the economy. Now, if I have two farms, then it poses a question to us, and this question is very simple. The question is that if I assume that there are two farms, so let's assume two farms F and G, all right. Also assume F and G both produces X and Y. Okay, so let's assume that. Okay, so assume two farms, okay, which looks a little bit, which is very close to S. So two farms F and G both produces X and Y. Now from this diagram we know that the resources devoted to X will be Lx bar and Kx bar. Now that begs the question that how will these resources be divided among F and G to produce X? Let me say it again because this question is important. What I'm trying to say is that how much of, or rather how Lx bar and Kx bar will be divided between F and G, right? Okay, so for that, we have solved this question earlier. Okay, in probably months back, we have solved it. So how do you do this? How do you find this? We employ, let's say Lx bar f and Lx bar g in such a way that MPL f equals MPL g. Okay, so that's our rule. And we have done this. We have, months back, we have drawn that kind of a diagram, right? Okay, so that's how we decided. And obviously, this decision is taken separately. So if we have two farms, then only we will find at which level of labor the marginal product for both the farms with respect to producing X independently and Y independently equals. And based on that, we will say that, okay, this will be the distribution of Lx bar, and similarly, the distribution of Kx bar. That will also depend on the marginal products equalization. Okay. Now, doing all that, what will be our production vector? So in writing that, I'll be assuming the structure of F and G, that is two farms producing X and Y. Okay. So the production vector or our solution, if one can say so, with two farms F and G, it will look like XF, YF, XG, YG. Okay, now look at this. This looks very similar to our consumers one, right? XA, YB, sorry, XA, YA, XB, YB. So that was in case of consumption. This is obviously in sense of production, but the important difference, okay, that is something that you have to remember, because otherwise you will solve the consumption problem correctly, and it will be entirely wrong if you solve production in the same manner. So here getting this is a bit different. So here I'm getting how much resources will be devoted to X and how much will be to Y. Then through the equalization of marginal products, okay, for each resource devoted to each product, I'm getting this answer. All right. Okay. So okay. Now here, if we want to write the equilibrium condition, then the equilibrium condition will be similar to what we have in consumption. So in consumption, we had the equilibrium written as the equality of MRS for two individuals. And here we will have MRTS, that is our counterpart, our slope of negative of the slope of the isoquants, right? So here we'll have MRTS L comma K for X equal to MRTS L comma K Y. This equilibrium condition tells much more clearly the kind of problem that we are solving here. So instead of, so compared to two consumers, we don't have two farms here. We have the products, right? So this diagram is finding the optimal amount of products, as I said. And unlike products, here in this, here we have input, as I said, that the box is, the size of the box basically depends on the inputs, amounts of inputs available. Okay. So this basically says that marginal rate of technical substitution, it will be same. That's easy, right? Now, just like earlier, if I assume competitive input market, if I assume that, then what happens? Then we have unique W and R, which tells me that I have unique W by R, right? And if I solve the same kind of optimization problem that we have solved in case of consumption, that is, if we optimize somebody's production, right? Then we will find that much like there we had MRS equal to P1 by P2, right? Here we will have MRTS x L comma K equal to W by R equal to MRTS Y L comma K. Right? So, that's how assuming perfect competition makes things a bit easier. But apart from making the whole problem solving easy, it tells a lot of things also. And the first thing, the most important thing that we have here is this. So in this contract curve going from OX to OY, we have all the properties and the problems, like 2 points on the contract curve are incomparable and all of that. But the important point is that if I go by this condition only, it will give me the contract curve, right? So this equation basically gives me contract curve. Now, what is contract curve? It's basically a contract curve is a collection of infinite points, all of which are Pareto efficient. So that means in terms of efficiency, if I look at, then this condition provides me the possible set of equilibria that I can reach through this activity of optimization and all. But if I assume perfect competition, then what happens is I have unique equilibrium. Okay, so that's a huge gain. What I'm trying to say is that here from contract curve, I get the condition which will be satisfied at equilibrium, but the number of such equilibria will be infinite as it's a line, as it's a curve, right? But inserting this W by R, assuming perfect competition, this makes this equation, because W by R is unique, is talking about one single point, right? Which point? At which the, much like Px by Py, the W by R line becomes tangent. Okay. So I'm just going to say, write this. This makes for an unique equilibrium. Okay. Now, as I said, that from here we are getting how much X from here, from the contract curve, we are getting infinite choices of X and Y. So if I, even if I look at the contract curve, right, each and every point like P1, P2 and P3. So P1, P2 and P3, they provide us choices, several choices of producing X and Y. Correct. But as I said, that if I have to connect it with consumption, then I need to have a diagram which is not drawn based on inputs, right? Which is not drawn based on inputs. I need a diagram. So to connect it with consumption, I'm going to need a diagram with X and Y in the axis. And this problem is solved by drawing a PPF, which is otherwise called production possibility frontier. So in the next session, we'll be talking about production possibility frontier. This is a diagram which is drawn on the basis of this contract curve. All right, but it serves our need. That is, the diagram will have X and Y in the axis. So here, I'll finish it just by drawing the respective PPF here, okay? And then we'll discuss it in the next session. So the PPF, which will be representing our contract curve in the earlier diagram, will look like this. Okay. So OY will be the amount of X that I will obtain if I produce only X, right? And OX is the amount of, OX will give us the amount of Y that I will get if I produce only Y, okay? So remember this, it's not OX in X. So in X axis, it will be given by OY, and in Y axis it will be given OX. If you find any confusion, okay, compare it to the Edgeworth box that we have drawn and you will understand. And just for our purpose, which will be clear as we go along, we'll be drawing this straight line. Now, since here we have moved from input space to product space, to finish, I will write the most trivial thing, which is that any point on the PPF is efficient. Any point beyond PPF is unattainable, so you cannot produce it. And any point inside PPF is basically inefficient. So let's say if I mark it, so at this point you can produce X and Y, but you can do better. At this point, it is such a point where if you want to increase X, then you have to reduce Y or vice versa. And this is a combination of X and Y, which given your resources, you cannot produce. Okay, so in the next session, we will start with PPF and look into its properties.